call her law Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Waha Rakakwadash. Double honors, as always, to the hopeful elect elders and apostles of the Israelite nation who rule well, namely the hopeful elect elder apostles over at the Great Millstone Church. Peace and many blessings be to the hopeful elect men of the Israelite nation who are diligently bringing forth the true doctrine of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, namely the brothers that I personally labor with over here in my congregation. Peace and many blessings be as well to the rest of the 1/3, all you true believers out there of the Israelite nation. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, and verse 3. It reads, "The ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib, but Israel doth not know. My people doth not consider." And this is going to be the perfect scripture to kick off this lesson, which was inspired by something that was said on the highways a few weeks back. And ultimately, we were speaking about, the Israelites being brought up here in spiritual Egypt, learning the ways, the customs, assimilating into, the customs of this place. And what I'm going to do is play a video. Matter of fact, I'm just going to play it now.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What is your name?
Carson Harris.
Nice to meet you, Carson Harris. How old are you?
I'm doing good.
I said, how old are you?
3.
And you're doing good?
Yeah.
I'll play it one more time.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What is your name?
Carson Harris.
Nice to meet you, Carson Harris. How old are you?
I'm doing good.
I said, how old are you?
3.
And you're doing good?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is pretty much an explanation of the scripture, because this little boy here, he's an Israelite, and the Israelites being God's chosen people, and today they're known as so-called black people, the so-called Negroes, so-called Latinos, and so-called Native American and Seminole Indian people who are scattered amongst the earth. And this little boy here is being taught, this young Israelite, he's being taught the ways of Egypt, from the way that he's dressed to his mannerisms to shaking the hands. These are all the ways of the so-called white man, because this is spiritual Egypt being America, the current place where the Israelites, a majority of the Israelites, if you will, are being still held captive to this day. And therefore this place is likened unto Egypt. And Pharaoh simply being the powers that be above us that is perpetuating this captivity upon the Israelites, and actually perpetuating this whole narrative of what it is to be a person. And ultimately it's just us, again, assimilating into the so-called white man's traditions, his ways, which is to be a deceiver, because we know the so-called white man is the devil, all right? And his ways are to deceive. And therefore, you see, they wear the suit, the tie. That's their get up. That's the way they go out and they look a certain way they're putting on, but inwardly these people are the devil. And the Israelites that are here are ultimately intrigued on trying to fit in with these people so they can, if you will, prosper in this environment. So I'm not gonna guess too much at the situation here, but I assume this woman, she's an Israelite woman who's teaching this young Israelite, boy, to act this way, to dress this way. She's basically trying to give him a persona, but that's not of his heritage. And I'm going to assume that she's possibly, I ain't gonna say for sure, but she's possibly a single mother, and that would make sense according to the curses, right? Many Israelite children don't grow up with their mother and father available in the same home, if that, knowing both, so it's pretty typical of a situation. And what we're seeing here, a young man being raised by a woman, and she's trying to just assimilate him into white America. So when he grows up, he can prosper amongst his enemies. And ultimately, the whole point of the lesson is that this is going to fail. It's going to fail in many ways. It's going to fail first and foremost because this young man is going to grow up and not know his true heritage. He's not going to truly know who he is. He's likely going to identify as being a so-called black man and not an Israelite. He's not being raised by a man, so he's not going to learn how to be a man from a woman. And then the furtherance of this is he's going to grow up and be a so-called black man in America, which is, again, spiritual Egypt. So he's going to outright fail simply because this is not his place to prosper. Even if he was to go on to be successful with this act that he's putting on with the suit and tie, speaking as they speak, trying to assimilate as well as possible is going to be to his failure, no matter which way you go, because he's going to grow up not knowing himself. He's not going to know who he is. And off top, the enemy has achieved his goal, which is to get this Israelite child and keep him away from his God-given identity, which is an Israelite, which is God's chosen people, and therefore not being accustomed to the Lord's law, statutes, and commandments, which were given to the Israelites, a set-apart people, the governing class people, because we're already better than these people in every way, but without our heritage, we are destroyed. So let's go come to the next scripture here. This is on the book of Jeremiah, chapter 17 and verse 4. It reads, "And thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not." And that's exactly what's going on here. This little man, he's being taught to serve his enemies. He's being taught to trim his ways, to assimilate into these people, to make them feel comfortable, to leave his masculinity behind, talk a certain way so the so-called white man feels comfortable when he's around, to put on a certain look, to put on this suit so the so-called white man can feel a certain way when he looks around, instead of dressing according to his own customs, speaking according to his own heritage, actually understanding and knowing who he is, understanding that he is in front of his enemy and can actually point out his enemies. He's being taken away from all these things. And this is ultimately what happened to the Israelites from falling away from our power. I'm going to read this again, Jeremiah 17 and 4. "And thou, even thyself," talking about the Israelite nation, "shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee." The heritage of the Israelites is not to wear a suit and tie, whatever more it takes to assimilate into the so-called white man's, his system. It says, "And I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not," completely serving this man by assimilating to his ways, changing how you naturally are to fit in, simply put. And it says, "For ye have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever." So ultimately, that's what led to this, this video that we watching.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What is your name?
Carson Harris.
Nice to meet you, Carson Harris. How old are you?
I'm doing good.
I said, how old are you?
3.
And you're doing good?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Lord willing, we're not here to the point that this young man is an adult to actually go into the world and be able to practice this, I don't even know what to say. We got a few more scriptures we close out. So this is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 2, I believe. Yeah, verse 33. It says, "Why trimmest thou thy way to seek love?" So we shouldn't have to trim our ways to be accepted. We have to remain and have integrity in our true heritage, which is the true doctrine of these scriptures, the true doctrine of the Bible, the true doctrine of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. We aren't to trim our ways to assimilate and to fit in to anybody's ways. Why? Because we are the standard. We are the nation that is to be set above all these people. We are the standard. So why would we trim our ways to assimilate? And it says, therefore hast thou also taught the wicked one thy ways. Verse 36, it says, why gaddest thou about so much to change thy way? It says, thou also shalt be ashamed of Egypt as thou was ashamed of Assyria. So the Lord said, ultimately, this is going to fail. Why gaddest thou about so much to change thy way? You're going so far out your way to change yourself. And it says, thou also shalt be ashamed of Egypt. You know, this Israelite woman, these Israelites, those whoever are conforming in this way, they're going to be ashamed because these ways are going to fail them regardless. Verse 37 says, yeah, thou shalt go forth from him and thine hands upon thy head, for the Lord has rejected thy confidences. I want to get that because the video, on it, if you read it, it says, I love how confident he is. And he's truly not confident at all. If he was confident, he'd be understanding of who he is, and he would be completely okay with that. He wouldn't be trimming his ways to meet the standards of the so-called white man. It says, for the Lord hath rejected thy confidences, and thou shalt not prosper in them. Exactly. These ways are not going to prevail. Again, even if you believe or feel like you prevail, maybe he goes on and this is successful in the so-called white man's world. Well, he failed his own self. He failed the traditions that are truly his, which is the ways of this doctrine. So this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 30 and 1. It says, woe to the rebellious children. The rebellious children are those who are going to rebel against this doctrine and go the opposite way and dress their children up like little Edomites, and going the way of the devil and put on this suit that is just deception and teach these young, they're young to grow up in this deception. Woe to the rebellious children. All right, those who forsake the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. It says, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me. Because this counsel, what she's telling this young man, is not of the Lord. It says, and cover with a covering, and that covering is this look that's here, the look that she's trying to portray this young Israelite man as, which is a covering not of the Lord. And the covering of the Lord is having this doctrine and understanding and knowing who you are, knowing that we are the Hebrew Israelites and we are God's chosen people, and that the so-called white man is our enemy, and that the so-called white man is the devil. We're expecting his end, and that's all we want. We want the world back because we understand and know who we are. We have been blinded and we know who we are today. We have come back. But outside of that, man, anything outside of that is not the covering of the Lord. It says, but not of me. It says to take counsel, but not of me, and that cover it with a covering, but not of my spirit. It says that they may add sin to sin, that walk to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Verse 3 says, therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. Because this is complete confusion what we see in here. So, Lord willing, this is edifying. Shalom.